Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. And we have a fine show for you this morning. We don't have our super big special guest, former council member Derek Green. He was had a scheduling conflict, so we're pivoting. We're welcoming our a regular guest, Styx Latte, and we'll have him on screen in a minute. We're going to be talking breaking old habits. You're not alone. There's a lot of breaking old habits going on in the world right now, and it's interesting to see like when you go out and you try and break some old habits, and you think, hey, am I the only one doing this? And then you realize there's a ton of people actually working on breaking old habits right at the moment. So you're not alone in that. By way of talking breaking old habits, we're going to be talking about CPAC, the conservative political whatever it is, the place for groypers and grifters to meet and greet and enjoy each other's company on the conservative side of things. We're going to be talking about the Youngkin setup, and how that relates to how things like the Virginia gubernatorial race relate to things like the Chicago mayoral race and the New Orleans mayoral race, mayoral recall. And then we'll be talking a little bit also mixed in there about the Philadelphia mayoral race, because they're all interconnected. At any rate, let me pin Styx to the correct screen, and then welcome Styx Latte on screen. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing just fine, thanks.
Uh,
Yep,
for
a
those
good
that
start to the
haven't
day.
watched before, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Oh, good morning. My name is Styx Latte, he, him, and what do I do? I don't know. Do you have all morning?
I,
I'm a
I
drummer,
I sort of do.
first and foremost, and that got me into recording and live sound and audio, video, and ultimately corporate, and most recently rigging. So I'm all over production, both sides of the curtain and camera, and yeah, let's just leave it at that for today.
You're a man of many talents, uh, um, an auteur, a self-guided guru of all things production related at this point.
And a few things non-production related.
So,
You give me
uh,
enough little details, I'll become a guru of anything. I love
right?
details.
When did Guru go out of style? Like, I remember in the late '90s, like everybody on their resume was calling themselves a guru of something or another.
Too many gurus abused their position and, took advantage of people. And they're like, ew, gurus. It's
Too
gross.
many gurus spoiled
Okay,
the milk
I don't want to be.
sauce.
I'm not a guru. I'm humble.
Right, right. Even if
How
you're not
about being an expert?
right.
I'm an expert.
um, what do you got going on right now? But I mean, I know one thing that you got going on right now because I'm deeply involved with it too, which is a show coming up at Center Theater in Norristown.
Yeah,
Um,
well, that's a really cool experience because we're using the Midas Behringer system M32X32, and I get to put all the pieces together of it. So in my studio at home, I'm using an M32 Midas console. It's a great console. Ardmore Music Hall is using one of those. They're all over the place. The Rotunda has one. But this time we've got two of them at the Center Theater, and we got one for the band and one for the actors, and we linked them together digitally. And then we got this nifty Ultranet monitoring system that lets all the individual musicians have their own monitors and put more me in my monitor if I want it, and I don't have to touch a thing. So it's like the uber super setup of Midas World, and it's a pretty cool experience. But that's kind of the culmination of stuff I've been doing here at Electric Latte Land. I already had the recording studio in the basement when the pandemic shut down the world, and I was consulted James quite a bit about my setup here, but I had to go with videos, and this is one of the backdrops from my Mystic Drums show. I entertain children with a percussion-oriented show. So, basically you keep adding one piece at a time and you realize, you look back and you're like, wow, I built a megaphone to address the world. So it's something James and I have in common is, because of pandemic, uh, to get ourselves right back on the topic, we had to change some old habits about how we do production.
We did.
And,
And
you know,
that is an interesting way to get back on topic. And sorry, I have a cat in my lap.
well, no,
This is
that's one of the
things.
old habits that we need to challenge. Is that like it's totally inappropriate to have a cat or a child on camera? Well, you know what? Life is happening right here. I don't have my shoes on. Oh, like if the mailman comes with the package, I'm gonna have to go get the door. I'm sorry, that's just life. But we don't have to interact with each other quite so personally and risk sharing airspace and spreading diseases. Which, I haven't actually been sick in 3 years. I hope it stays that way. It's
Yeah.
a nice feeling.
I mean, there's been in during the time of pandemic and in this kind of post-pandemic breakout. I want to call it post-pandemic breakout because like we're still in-ish a pandemic, and there's new things coming around that are just as bad or worse than COVID-19. But just because we don't have massive deaths every day anymore doesn't mean that people aren't still getting sick. The circle of people around me that have never had COVID shrinks by the day, and I keep hearing, oh, I had COVID last week. I'm like, stay away from me. I don't want it. But yeah, it's just interesting that we transitioned to finding ways to still interact and communicate and live life. And there was this argument about, there's still an ongoing argument about what is necessary to do in person. Um,
Right.
what requires in person, in your face interaction and yeah,
Rigging.
sure.
You have to be there to put the stuff in the ceiling
Sure. Why,
in
but
person.
why do we have to put the stuff in the ceiling?
Uh, well, we want a bunch of people in the space, and then there's going to be a bunch of seats, and then there's going to be a big space. So then there's going to be a big stage, and then people don't want stuff in the sight line because you want to sell seats, right? Well, they all got to be equally good. Yeah. Okay. Well, get that stuff off the floor. Oh, well, now we need to, yeah, we got to put it in the air. What do you mean it costs so much money to put it in the air? Well, because we'll put it in the air, it might fall and kill somebody.
That is one of
There you go.
the interesting arguments that we keep hearing. Like why does stuff cost so much all of a sudden? And I think that's an old habit we need to break in production. A lot of the old habits that I'm talking about today are production habits. That I would like to talk about are production habits. They're
And I
in
would add to the pile life habits that people have had changing on them over or failed to change over the last few years that are now like not serving today's post-pandemic world. Or, maybe people have changed in some ways and others haven't caught up. You know,
like
uh, well, I think that part of why production is easy to burn your candle at both ends. In the before times, man, we all loved that. Yes, 12-hour days. The show must go on. We're gonna be here till 4 in the morning tonight. But it's kind of addictive until Monday morning. We all crash. Like we're not the best production folks. Don't always make the best life partners because of this. Unless you're with somebody that understands and gets it and enjoys the roller coaster too. But the thing is, for me personally, having to sit down and say, okay, my whole industry is it's all live events. Nobody's going anywhere. I'm basically on sabbatical. I got unemployment. I had some other forms of assistance here and there, and I had no choice but to coast. And that meant a couple of things. Where I was developing this green screen setup here, so I had to still look presentable on camera. So I was still showering, shaving, doing my hair. Like it took no slug bath, and I really, so, but it became a habit. And then I started doing yoga, and I always thought, oh, yoga, that's just a bunch of hippies in the park doing upside down handstands and like chilling out. It's a really rigorous form. Reconnected with someone from my past, is now my girlfriend, is a very an excellent teacher of Bikram yoga. And so what that did for me was started prioritizing feeling good for myself. Like I don't need to wait for somebody's 12-hour days schedule and then a break in them to say, okay, whoa, put the brakes on. I'm no good to you if I don't stop and take a self-care day.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
my
And
brain working. You
that,
need my body, my muscles working to do this job right.
I think that's a huge thing. Like, not only did me especially, at least from my personal perspective, during during the years, and it was actually multiple years. It doesn't feel like it, but it was multiple years that we weren't doing production like this. I got out of the condition in which I could just put in a 14-hour day and not think about it. It suddenly, became, oh, if I'm pushing 8 hours, I notice. And I don't know if that's age or if that's what we were, like what we do for a living. What we do is very physical, lifting sheets of plywood, building things, etc. Um,
Road cases.
Moving road cases, pushing boxes. Is that, like, is it just because it's physical, or because even, I don't
I
know.
don't think we were ever in shape for it to begin with. I think
Right.
we were just doing it to ourselves and it seemed normal. But I was like 38 going on 80 with the way my body felt because it was all pushing and hard work and abuse. It wasn't ever like go to the gym. It wasn't ever stretching. And we all joked about it, like, yeah, see, this is why we don't go to the gym. We just load trucks. It's fun. I like the momentum. I never needed to worry about keeping my weight down. It's just like there's always, and I was biking to work a lot of the time too, so that was pretty cool. But like even that can be hard on your knees. Most of the exercise that we get that we don't intentionally participate in is also damaging to ourselves. So like, what do you do after that 14-hour day? You're not going to the gym, right? You're going to collapse. You're not even going to take a bath. You
Right.
collapse.
I mean,
And you're gonna
look at
wake
my
up and like,
face. Like,
oh, I got joint pain.
I mean,
Well, it's
just,
just I'm getting old. I'm 39 now. What?
just look at my hair and face. Like, I haven't shaved or like properly done my hair in probably a month and a half now, like 6 or 8 weeks, because we've been marathoning on
Look at
this.
him. He rolls out of bed looking like this. Ooh la la.
But I don't think during the pandemic, um, we had the opportunity to reassess, I would say, what priorities in life are. Amanda Gullah commented, we need people to gather to make a grid so more people can gather to give us money. Um, and I think that's correct. I think it's both funny and correct. Um,
It also applies to hanging lights in the ceiling, ironically enough.
yeah, and hanging speakers in the ceiling, and everything else that we've done over the past month and a half. Um, but it is that, so I think we reprioritized our own health and safety over getting a project done. Um, and
Yeah, and that's hard for producers to understand because they're expecting the before times work ethic. But like, I can't pay people small money to come out to Phoenixville and do the Firebird Festival in freezing rain or a blizzard all day long on a 14-hour day. Like, that's big money. You want me to come out and risk the cold weather?
I can't
And
even pay people big money to come out to, for a 14-hour day.
yeah,
I don't see it working. Like, I'm 44. My joints hurt. Yes, I'm tired. I'm exhausted, etc., etc. I don't think it's right to, maybe I'm weird. I take whatever I experience and extrapolate it onto the world. I think more people should do that, but like if I don't want to work a 14-hour day, how can I expect somebody else to want to work a 14-hour day?
well, isn't it more expensive? I mean, like at a certain point, you got to be like, there's too many hours. We got to start paying you overtime, you know? So then you got a couple of choices. The person can say, well, all right, I'm 22. I don't need the overtime. I need the experience. All right, great. Now you got a bunch of young and experienced people, but you got a bunch of them because they don't need overtime. Right. But then you got someone who's like, no, 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 no. I'm an experienced op. 10-hour days. I don't give me this 1 hour walk away lunch crap. Just like I'm here for 10 hours. What are you gonna explain it to my dog that I couldn't be home in time to walk him? He's gonna poop on the floor, you know? Like, okay, so you have a continuum there of people who are and are not willing to tolerate. But certain time after probably 10, maybe 12 hours, they're going to want more money for it. And you start thinking to yourself, well, why was it so important that we had to be burning our candle at both ends here? Now it costs more. Because
I
now
don't
we're
even
paying
think it's
more, but we're not
I think the
getting more.
cost thing, especially the way unions structure overtime costs, is more of a discouragement to ever go into overtime.
Well,
Cause
right. Because you're not going to get better or more labor out of it.
right, you're getting a two-thirds or a half the output, and you're paying one and a half times more for it. Um,
Right.
so
So it's inefficient. So you really shouldn't be planning like that.
right.
But then what does that mean? You need to refresh the shift. You need twice the labor pool.
Right. And in our world, that doesn't exist either. It's not like I can get.
We got half the labor pool. A
Right.
lot of people left. Some people died. So a lot of people killed themselves.
Yeah.
Like the guy from local 8 that was handling unemployment for everybody. I mean, he went through hell just like answering questions and talking to people. But a lot of his personal friends died, killed themselves, and like it was hard to watch this guy working so hard for everybody else and literally having his friends just like I can't take it anymore. You know.
Well,
Uh,
so during the pandemic, so this is
times aren't what we used to be because there's just the numbers aren't there.
this is the "you're not alone" part of the topic. What I was fascinated to find, I had a long conversation. I've had a lot of long conversations about this problem with a lot of producers, and not even and people who work in the industry, not just producers. But I was surprised to find um, kind of a commiseration or similar goal amongst producers, that we're all looking for a way to service the needs of the people that work on our crews, um, while still getting the job done, and not not having um, not having people work 14, 16-hour days, etc. So I think we'll find, like, I feel for the people that could not deal with it any longer. At the same time, um, I would like to say that they're not alone. People, if people are feeling like they're alone in this effort, or in the universe, trying to deal with the fallout from the changes that our society has gone through, they're not alone. Um, I mean, maybe that helps one or two people. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Hopefully, it helps somebody. You're not alone. It's not something that it is something that everybody is thinking about. Um,
Well, I think on both sides of it, there's got to be an adjustment of expectations. I have to adjust my expectation of how much I can accomplish and ultimately how much money I think I can earn. I got choices. I could work on my house, I could work on my car. Those both build prosperity, but they don't pay my bills. I could go to work, I could go to some other work or some other work or some other, like I got a billion different jobs, but each one I'm deciding week to week, day to day sometimes, well, which is going to give me the most money for my time in and allow me the most time to sleep later so that I can do those other things I want to do. Everyone's making that decision, but we can't hit the productivity we thought we had from the before times. So like, I've got a list of things to do as long as my arm, and I'll never get to even more of them than ever before. On the other side, take a production. Anytime you go to see a Broadway play, there's going to be top-notch sets and costuming, right? Okay, but if you come over here to Electric Latte Land and see a Mystic Drums production, you're going to see Larry the Frog. You're going to see a picture of Panther Pond in Maine that I took. And you're going to see a bunch of percussion instruments. What do I have here? About like couple $100 worth of lights and a green screen. It's a one-man show. I do all my tech and everything. What actually sells it is your acting, your stage presence, your ability to tell the story. And a fancier set's never going to change that. I mean, if you look at Doctor Who from the 70s, there's some downright bad production and some downright bad writing, and there's some downright bad actors, but those moments when it shines. K9 is made out of a cardboard box, okay? But like, man, Tom Baker could really sell it sometimes because he just had that smile, or he had that 1,000 parsec stare, and there was something about it. Or even original Star Trek, the whole fun of it is that the ship is falling apart most of the time, and that the props are just painted real quick with tempera or something, But
I was looking at it. I was looking at a chair, a photo of a chair aboard, like not even one of the main ships from a movie. It was a picture of a chair. This is Star Trek related, and it was on and also like a co-star ship, not a star like a featured ship. It was just anyway, the chair has all this detailing, right? And in a still, it's obvious that like somebody only took like 4 or 5 hours to put this thing together. The stitching is bad, the details aren't great. It's still, you know, an amazing chair, an amazing prop. Um, from the perspective of, did anybody ever notice that? Did it take away from the storytelling?
right.
Um, did anybody even care a little bit? That
If
that
they'd
sh-
spent 20 hours on the chair instead of 4 or 5, would it be that much better for the shot?
right. And there
Yeah.
and there are those diminishing returns in that as well. Not just the diminishing returns in the labor ability, but also the diminishing returns of how many more hours do you want to spend on these details that can be told in other ways versus just telling it in a different way to save your, not only to save budget, but to save the diminishing returns. Like you probably this major motion picture probably spent $500 on that chair. If they had spent $50,000 on the chair, they would have gotten a chair with like really great detailing. They could have sent it out to like, some stitcher in Italy to put together a nice leather back with like, like you would for a car or something. But
Well, check this out. This is Larry the Frog,
Larry is
and
green, so we couldn't see him.
this is Larry the Frog,
Uh-huh.
and this is Larry the Frog,
Uh-huh.
and there's at least three other Larry the Frogs in a bag over there. And nobody in 12 years, 13 years has ever called me out on the fact that that's not Larry the Frog. The frog is blue. No, Larry's green. No, Larry's bigger than that. He's a no, nobody cares. Larry the Frog came from my imagination.
And you're
It
and you're
doesn't
telling a
matter.
story with a prop, and the at the end
Right.
of the day, the prop doesn't matter as much as the storytelling.
And this is the thing that, like, my earliest entry into drama was Shakespeare. It was A Midsummer Night's Dream, and there were a couple just basic tenets that they taught us about. One is that there's going to be cross dressing. First of all, women weren't acting at that point; it was only men, so all the women's roles were played by men. So get over yourselves. And the other was it's minimal props and costuming. We don't have these elaborate sets. So you're Snug the Joiner? All right, well, I have to sell it with a newspaper bag full of PVC pipes, a monkey wrench, and a lion's mask.
Right.
And our enchanted forest was slinkies and hula hoops hung from the the bars up in the grid there. It wasn't really much of a grid. I'm not sure what the backdrop system was, but it was not complicated. Let me tell you.
Well,
And the fairies were all skating around on rollerblades. And then
Amanda,
we just had like silly colored stage wash. And
yeah,
that was it. Like, that was our production.
Amanda made some good points in the comments here. The producers and designers also should be creating with an understanding of builders having a limited working hours that they can contribute, and also should be ready to either have contingency plans for the laborers who can't get it done, or to strongly defend the design choices that matter, that they should be prioritized from the start instead of the extraneous set dressing. What she's talking about there, I feel like is something that we've lost in modern production, where every artistic choice is important into most modern directors and producers, and at the end of the day, they're not. Like, there are priorities. Like,
Well,
the
yeah, that's it. They all mean something, but we got to do them in priority order. And when we're out of time, we just got to be like, well, that's it. Let's as best as we can get it this time.
right. Is it the first and foremost priority is a surface that people can walk on and stand on without getting hit by things or injuring themselves.
Oh my goodness. What? No, that makes too much sense. You can't do that.
I mean, that's a TD's job. That's a technical director's job. At the end of the day, that's their job, is to make sure you can walk through a space that you're performing in, or dance through it, or whatever you're doing in it, without injuring yourself.
Right. Whenever I lay down stage deck, and then I'm like, okay, we got to get those two just level, and we got to tape it up with gaff tape. No, there's going to be women with high heels. What? No, every single time there's going to be, and I play in a swing band with a woman who wears high heels all the time. So you're damn right, I'm thinking about women with high heels on any stage I'm on. Like one little stiletto and one little divot, and she goes over, and the whole show is canceled. Like, what if
Right.
that was the CEO of the company that you're doing some corporate event for? But what if that's the lead role in your play? You can't have something that's going to trip your lead role in the middle of a run. So yeah, you gotta start with the basics, work your way out to what actually works.
Amanda also quoted you as once saying, "Gig life is feast or famine." But it's interesting. Like, we have a person who's working with us. He's a really great guy, but he's constantly pushing himself. He's constantly like doing like four or five jobs, and he's young, so he has the ability to push through that, but also he's very clearly tired. Um, and I worry for his health and safety. And then Amanda's their comment is that they think that aligns with the pressure to be constantly moving and to rest later. Um, and I guess her question is, but how do we get our bodies to believe it is later before we're on to the next project? Like
That's a Cookie Monster question.
Cookie Monster question.
Nom, 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 nom. Oh, I saved the rest of this cookie for later.
It's later.
Is it later now? It is. Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah, and it is always later. At the same time, it is never later. Um, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Like, how do we convince ourselves? Like, we're
Well, it comes down to money, really. Like we got to pay the bills, and then we want other stuff. And so, if we don't even have our bills paid, we're not going to relax. We're going to be staying up all night wondering how we can get more money.
But why do we have to pay our bills? No, I mean that's
You
it
like
sounds like
electricity, right?
it sounds like a dumb question, but seriously, like, why do we have to pay our bills? Like, why? There's been a movement to say, like, making a living, like the euphemism for work.
Well, it's because you need electricity and running water in your house and heat, and those things cost labor of some sort. You can build yourself a diesel engine with a tall exhaust pipe and run it on biodiesel that you grew or collected vegetable oil to make or whatever. You could do that. You could not use the refrigerator. You could change your whole diet. You could chop firewood. You don't have to use natural gas. My heat's electric. Like you could have a well, and you don't have to use electricity to pump from it. You could draw it up, pump like they did in the good old days, if you want. I mean, you don't have to pay your bills. You can live off the grid. It's going to be a little bit harder here in Philly because it's set up like a grid, because we all want to like just make it easy on ourselves and pay somebody else to do that so we can go like 25 minutes downtown and go to work. So you don't have to pay your bills, but it's a lot easier if you do.
Garehouse commented, fundamental question, doesn't the earth belong to all of us?
I have a plot of land on Mars.
Yeah,
I have the deed for it.
great.
So that belongs to me, I'm sure.
Deed, you know why it's called a deed?
Why?
Because you used to have to do something to own a plot of land. You had to do something to that plot of land to own a plot of land.
I did do something. I was consistently handsome and charming, and the plot of land was thusly given to me for my birthday.
Amanda's point was Amanda's response to this question, maybe our taxes or some rich guy's taxes could pay for everyone's bills instead of funding police budgets or military propaganda.
Maybe.
Which I think is a good segue. I wanted to talk about the Youngkin effect. Virginia elected a governor. His last name is Youngkin. And he was sold to the electorate as a moderate Republican. He's supposed to be somebody who believes in social programs, is able to relate to the leftist ideals, the quote unquote leftist ideals of taking care of everybody. Everybody, the world belongs to everybody, and therefore, and I'm just summarizing leftist ideals, which I'm probably doing a horrible job of it, and like Marx is probably rolling over in his grave. But
Groucho?
no, Carl.
Oh.
But to Garehouse's point, doesn't the world belong to everybody? Why should we have to make a living? Why should we have to isn't there an inherent ownership of yourself and the resources needed to keep yourself alive. And therefore, why should we have to make a living? Don't we just deserve a living for being alive? Um, and like it's a leftist viewpoint. It's a progressive slash leftist slash Marxist viewpoint. Everybody deserves which is funny because it's also the foundation of our country. Everybody deserves the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Um, you know, uh, um, Gerhaus just said people in Alaska share in the oil proceeds of the state, and they do. They get, I think each Alaskan resident gets something like $25,000 a year from oil proceeds from mining in the state. Um, it's it's not a universal basic income, but it is a benefit that they get for just being residents of the state, and a benefit that they get because the concept of ownership of the land is vested in the people by the Constitution of Alaska. Um,
Yeah,
so
but that's just the story we told ourselves. I think you should ask Bambi this question. Because, I mean, basically, excuse me for being morbid, but we're all on the run from death the moment we're born. And the first thing Bambi knows about life is, oh my goodness, my mother just got shot by a hunter. And then they close the movie off, right? So you don't have to deal with any of the horrible stuff that happened. Like, Bambi's on the run now. Bambi now realizes that this is the world he lives in. Like, wait a minute, if I don't keep running, like I need to eat, I need to hide someplace warm where I can sleep for a while because I can't work 14-hour days just running from hunters all the time. So, I mean, like, yeah, we have these societal constructs telling us that, well, oh, I live in Alaska, I own the land, that's my oil, give me my money. Because you over there, you don't want to have to run or like build a fire because it's cold. You want to put oil in your car and you want to put fuel in your heating oil tank, well, all right, so that guy in Alaska has shifted the caloric throughput to his favor, right, and now is therefore owed a comfortable existence because, well, basically because America is busy keeping Russia off our lawn. Though it's about bombs and stuff, it's not really about ownership. We're paying all these people basically for their protection racket to not kick them off their lawns because they're kicking someone else off of our collective lawn. But there's no inherent ownership of it. If I just like pop out the womb and everybody disappears and I'm like, that's it, I'm going to get eaten by the next dragon that comes along.
um,
So, money's just kind of like a displacement of that, showing us all how we help each other run from the dragon.
okay, so let's say you're right. Let's go back to Youngkin. Youngkin has, through his policies and proclamations and laws pushed for, etc., shown himself not to really be a moderate. He's been anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, anti-education, anti woke, which woke is a meaningless word now, but let's use it for the time being. Um, and
I woke at 8:20 today.
huh?
I woke at 8:20 today. What's the matter with it?
So he's been a test balloon for a set of policies and a set of getting those policies done without pissing off the electorate. And I would say that relates to Lori Lightfoot because I think Lori has been an example of what happens when you don't test balloon these kinds of things, or a test balloon is very unsuccessful. Lori Lightfoot was elected as a progressive, and then tried to play the middle ground. What's interesting is all these politicians are always elected with a more left bent to what they're saying, and then they move right as soon as they're in the office, no matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. They move, Democrats move towards what we now call center, but which is really kind of on the conservative side, and then conservatives, play like they're centrists, and then move hard right as soon as they're in office. Um, but anyway, the it's the same effect. Lightfoot ran as a progressive, very um, willing to acknowledge that Chicago has a disinvestment in social programs, in neighborhoods, disinvestment in people of color, and promised to reinvest in those things to help control the crime problems and social problems uh, of the city. Um, at the moment, last night she lost a re-election campaign horrendously. Like she came in way third. Where's this number? She came in like below third. She came in at 17% of the vote. Um, where the two front runner candidates were at 33 and 20% of the vote prospectively. She was down by 20,000 votes over the next candidate, which there's 70,000 votes separating the top two candidates. That's still a pretty bad indictment of her policies if you can't get a third of the electorate to vote for your reelection. Um, and she's been panned by both sides um, for her policies because she's moved back and forth between being like pro cop and then being like pro social programs. Um, and I don't know. It's weird that we've stacked these things against each other. But a lot of the Philadelphia mayoral candidates have released policies, crime uh, prevention policies that purport to be, um, splitting the middle. Like they're pro social programs, but also fund more police. And I don't see that working. Because if the Lightfoot Youngkin um, thing continues, doesn't that just mean they move to all pro cop once they get in office? Um, I don't know.
One might think.
So interestingly, article from the New York Times, aside from the editorializing, the New York Times lately has been very editorial, even in its factual articles, and it's taken on a very conservative editorial stance. But after you get through the editorial intro, which you know for some reason, all the editorializing in news right now is very supportive, very pro cop, very supportive of, and highlighting people who say things like, we need more police, and highlighting the people who support that, like providing a megaphone to those people while pulling the mic away from the people who are like, well, we need social programs. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's interestingly so in this of the two candidates that remain, there is Mr. Valles, and Mr. Johnson. Valles is um, the former head of the school district for Chicago,
Okay.
and Valles and Johnson is also a former educator. He's a former teacher. Interestingly, Johnson won the support of the teachers union. Valles didn't. Um, and these two candidates take a widely different stance on funding the police or defunding the police. Johnson at one point actually publicly said defunding the police is a good idea and investing that money in social programs instead of just dumping it on the police to take care of is a good idea. Um, and Johnson has taken, sorry, Valles has taken a very hard on crime stance. We need to clean up Chicago. Chicago is a cesspool, etc. And basically, his whole campaign was indicting Lori Lightfoot for being soft on crime and creating the conditions that Chicago now faces. What's interesting to me is Chicago isn't facing anything different than Philadelphia, New York, L.A., San Francisco, Seattle, Tacoma, Miami. They're all facing the same thing, which is an uptick in gun crime, an uptick in assaults, an uptick in car theft, and an uptick in every other measurable type of crime, um, which I think has very little to do with policies in place or who's in charge. Um, because you get to major conservative run cities, and they're the same way. And if you look into the suburbs, they're the same way too. Um,
Well,
so,
I'd say it's more about management and application of the funds. And a lot of this scenario reminds me of Bill Clinton's interview with Oprah Winfrey, as a matter of fact, where he was looking back. I think it was during the Obama administration. He was looking back on things he did well and didn't do well. He had done well rather and hadn't done well. And he was talking about the Republicans' need for being tough on crime, something that he had to meet in the political race. And he ended up introducing a crime bill. I forget exactly what the details were. He said he regretted it because it ended up filling the system with a lot of minorities, and people that were there for entirely too long for crimes that were kind of disproportionate. And it also had like stoked the private prison industry in ways that he hadn't intended, and it was really sad to see come to fruition, where basically he had written this crime bill, so he could look tough on crime, because he had to also, I'm paraphrasing now, but he also had to pander to the Republican constituency and give them what they wanted in order to get the votes away from, his Republican opponents. And I thought, well, that's such a typically Democratic thing to do, where as Democrats, it's more the attitude of like, well, we need social services, we need protections for all, we need to be fair to everybody. And a lot of times those are just as disingenuous. Like, they say that stuff, but they're saying that stuff to get the votes. It's not because they actually mean it, because they go home to these conservative middle and upper white class family people neighborhoods where, like, yeah, we have Black people in our neighborhood, but there's not a lot of them, and the ones, they're okay. The folks that mean well but don't get it, that they're racist because they've just been surrounded by this bland culture their whole lives. Those are the folks that the politicians are trying to keep happy. And so when you have one of those like nice, tightly controlled neighborhoods and a well-funded police department, and they all have brand new Ford Explorers, and they're all decked out with all the latest riot gear and everything, everyone feels safe. They're not actually safe because it's it's a skewed picture. And then you come to my neighborhood. I'm in West Philly, kind of between University and Southwest, and it's like, well, okay, what's the enforcement patterns here? Do people give a fuck about what happens in my neighborhood? It's just a bunch of people shooting each other up over drugs. We don't care. And there's like kind of,
there is a care in as much as Garehouse said in the comments is that the three strikes and you're outlaw. Um, if you weren't born before or during the Clinton era, there Clinton and his wife Hillary both took a very tough on crime stance. The ostensible reasoning behind taking a tough on crime stance was that crime could be stamped out by removing the criminal element from society. And also, it was a way to work together with the Republican Party and get somewhere on healthcare because we've been trying to solve for universal healthcare in America since actually before I was born. So we've been trying to solve for universal healthcare since probably the New Deal or slightly before. And there's been some advances and some declines, but overall, one of the Clinton campaign promises and one of the drives of the Clintons since before they were in national politics, back when they were in Arkansas politics, was to nationalize healthcare and get everybody covered. And to your point, sometimes it's disingenuous, but I think that oftentimes a lot of Democrat politicians come from a place of genuinely being concerned about a specific topic, and then once they get into office, they find they have to make a lot of art, like they have to represent a lot of things that they wouldn't necessarily agree with in order to get anything done. I've talked with like a couple of the progressive members of Philadelphia City Council, and they're like, before I got into City Council, I never realized that I could, and the list of things I could and could not do. Um, I just thought if I won, they said they just thought if they won office, they could just get some of these things done. And there isn't a way to do them. Anyway, so the tough on crime bill, the weapons ban, assault weapons bans, which were very specifically targeted at inner city black populations. The war on drugs laws that started in the Reagan administration, but then continued on the same tack through the Clinton administration and the Bush administration, were all targeted at black people. It was fascinating that, crack cocaine, which is chemically the same as regular powder cocaine, um, was punished four times as harshly for the same amount of actual available drug, in dosage, not in physical like weight, but because crack cocaine has a higher dosage per gram, but regular cocaine has a dosage per gram, and if you analyze it as like how much what are we punishing here? Are we punishing the use of the cocaine molecule, or are we just punishing people who don't have enough money to defend themselves, and therefore they're using crack cocaine to get away from the daily life of living in an inner city? Um,
Well, that's just it. It's a selective punishment, and when I hear the words defund the police, I'm thinking that's kind of irresponsible. It's not a precise enough solution. The police need funding, but they need some kind of supervision to not use it wastefully and racist means, basically. Like if you give a bunch of people a whole bunch of money and resources and say, yeah, but watch out for those black people over there, they're going to cause you trouble, then the people that you just armed are going to be looking for that trouble and find it wherever they can.
well, I
But
always
if
say
you
it. I always say
change
it.
the policies and change the funding allocation to something that's a little more reasonable for what society needs, then we're not talking defund the police. We're talking about manage the police much better and hold them accountable for their actions. And
I,
that money would be much better spent.
I always say it as the most expensive tool in your bag. You know, if you're a carpenter and the most expensive tool in your bag is a hammer, then everything you approach, you're going to try and approach the solution for it with that hammer. If the correct tool for the job isn't in your bag, and instead it's in the Lowe's, and you don't have the money to buy it, you're gonna look for a solution involving that hammer, even though that hammer is just going to make a mess of everything and isn't going to solve the problem. It's the most expensive tool problem. You know, we spend more on police, therefore we use the police to solve absolutely everything. Um, so how do we not do that? Well, we defund the police, but that it may sound irresponsible, but it is the actual solution. It's not there.
Well, reallocation of funds is a more positive frame up for something that like negativity doesn't really solve anything. It tells us what we don't want, but then we just become magnets for that thought process.
Yeah.
Refund, spend more responsibly, hold accountable. And it's the same with healthcare. You know, like you can spend endless money and resources treating symptoms and not curing anybody, but if you educate people on preventative healthcare maintenance, then it's a much lower drain on the system because there's fewer people in the hospital all the time. So it's the same with society and police funding. Well, okay, why are people stealing cars? Why are people assaulting each other? Why are people robbing convenience stores? You know, it's because there's not enough money to go around. Honestly, like there's not enough good jobs and there's not enough good people to fill them. And that's hard to expect people to want to come to work when you're making less than $15 an hour, and that's not enough to put a roof over your head if you do it 40 hours a week. So why do we have all this crime? It's because society's equation doesn't balance. And some people said, I'm not participating because the system is stacked against me, so I'm gonna get mine any way I can. And I don't blame them. And by some people, I mean my neighbors.
Right.
And I'm not really on a dividing line on the other side of them either. I'm in the race too, you know.
Well, these are old habits that we need to break. I think that
Exactly.
may be a better frame up for what we're talking about.
There you
We
go.
should break the old habit of investing more in policing to solve every single problem that we have, rather find the actual root of the problem and invest in that. And if that means defunding the police because they have too much monetary resources, that means defunding the police. You know, it's not something different than defunding. It's that we're overinvested in something. We're
That all
overinvested in
needs to be part of
policy.
the conversation for sure.
I'm sorry,
That all needs to be part of the conversation for sure. You
but it's
know,
not a soundbite, and you can't sell it that way.
right, right.
Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. I need to run. I have a couple of effects to install on the set, and then I have tools to pack up. Um, any last thoughts?
It's like my grandma used to say, you get nothing from nothing.
You get nothing from nothing. Hmm. All right. Thanks for chatting with me today, Styx. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm gonna go to a one up of me, and I'm gonna get us out of here. Feel free to stick around for a moment in the Zoom if you want to chat afterwards. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I appreciate you joining us for another coffee break chat. Tune in next Wednesday. We'll have another wonderful guest, and we'll have another wonderful show for you. It looks like we're going to have Megan Belloir, director of A View from the Bridge at New Light Theater next week. So we'll be talking production, we'll be talking shows, and we'll be talking about whatever's new in politics next week. And I hope to see you then. If you like what you've seen, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this around. I get more subscribers and it gets more pushed out that way. And it's free for you to do. Perhaps costs you a couple of cents in calories burned and or time consumed, but I really appreciate the help if you can do it. So tune in next week, like, subscribe, share, And if you want to support us monetarily, please consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthiefproductions. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Talk to you later, everybody.